Good morning. One of the confusing things about Scripture to me is, why is it that after the resurrection, after that glorious Easter day, that the disciples don't seem to recognize the Lord? He has been risen, he's victorious, he displays himself to them, and yet they don't recognize him. Mary comes to the tomb to dress the body. Instead, she finds an angel who declares him as alive, and yet she still doesn't recognize him. She mistakes him for a gardener. Peter doesn't recognize him. The disciples on the road to Emmaus don't recognize him. He seems to appear to some and not to others. It feels like that first Easter day was slightly more chaotic than we give credence to. Sometimes we think of Easter as this glorious day of victory. We celebrate it on Easter in churches, as we should. And yet it seemed to have been more chaotic. Easter morning, the morning after Jesus, or the morning that Jesus rose from the dead, his disciples were still confused and in chaos. I've been celebrating the Eucharist every morning. My Easter has been a little like those disciples, though not nearly as chaotic. But it was a little different in that I didn't get to celebrate with my congregation. I didn't get to have dinner with my extended family or friends. We were all alone and we were isolated, as I know you all are. And it's been a different Easter. It's been a harder Easter in that sense. And yet I've still been celebrating communion every day except Friday at noon. We've been participating in communion, and this morning's text talk about how two of his disciples were walking along the road and ran across him, but they too didn't recognize him. And they were walking along him, and he asked them, what's the matter? And he told them all about, have you not heard the story about this Jesus? Do you not know that he died? Or are you the only one in all of Israel who didn't know this story? And as they walk along, he starts to declare his messiahship, even though they still don't recognize him. He declares to them why it was important for him to die, etc., etc. And it's not until they invite him in for dinner and he breaks the bread as he did during the Last Supper, and he shares the wine as he did during the Last Supper, that they recognize him for who he is. And after that, he seems to disappear. And when he disappears, his disciples say, hey, we realize now that he was there all along. He was the one who was walking along the road with us because we felt our hearts warmed and we knew that this was true. So it's somehow in the midst of taking communion, in the midst of worship, he comes alive to them. They recognize who he is. I have to tell you, the same has been true for me. Even though this was a weird Easter, it was an odd Easter, this celebration of the Eucharist every single day, taking the bread, taking the wine, and receiving it has been encouragement for me. I don't have to be afraid. He is present. He has a plan. There is a future. And it is also declared to me that he's been there. He was there that Easter, even though it was different. He's been around this whole time and continues to be around. Do not be afraid is the message that I receive. And I wonder if the same is true for you. If God is present in your life, but sometimes we just don't see him. Sometimes we mistake him for someone else, like a gardener. Sometimes we think that he's not present when he's really acting all the time. I pray that on this day for you, whatever it is, whether you need to take a moment alone and pray, whether you need to read some scripture, whether you need to sing a hymn, I don't know what it is, but I pray that on this day for you, there be a period in time where you recognize the presence of God and where that presence blesses you and you begin to realize, oh, he's been here all along. Through the hardship, through the joy, through it all, my Lord has been walking and standing with me, guiding me. I pray you be blessed this day. I look forward to seeing you soon, and I pray your studies go well.